Good morning, everybody. This is kind of a popular theme this week. When I was doing my final review yesterday, I noticed a lot of kind of threads from the opening and closing yesterday, and even our first talk this morning from Jeff. So I hope I teach you something new, or maybe reiterate in a different way, something you might have already heard. But there should be a little something for everybody. So if someone asked you how to get into tech today, what would you tell them? What resources would you share? Tools, programs, educational options? Would you even recommend they do it at all right now? This is a question I've been asked more times than I can count in the last 6 months, because the 4-year degree program is kind of the only clear answer, because a lot of our other options are going away. Before I go any further, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm giving this talk. My name is Erin Pintozzi. I've been working in tech in some capacity for the last 12 years. All sorts of roles ranging from project manager to developer to instructor to it's a startup. I do a little bit of everything. And I also recently got chickens. I'm absolutely smitten by them. And so if education in tech is not your jam, feel free to talk to me about chickens later. Most recently, I served as an instructor at Turing School of Software and Design, which was based out of Denver. We closed our doors in June for reasons that will kind of be touched on here. In those 4 years, I taught approximately 300 budding developers, all remotely. And now I'm doing some part-time consulting with a few different Rails shops, with a side of chicken farming. I've worked with learners and engineers of all different backgrounds, recent high school grads and GEDs to people with PhDs. I've had folks in their late teens and their 60s. I've worked with parents, caretakers, city dwellers, RV livers, just people from all walks of life. And each time they prove to me that there's no single mold for who deserves to be an engineer. As an instructor for junior engineers, I kind of wore a lot of hats. I taught people how to code and reviewed that code. I think that part is probably assumed by most. I acted as project manager. I did assessments in the form of code challenges, performed mock interviews, gave project requirement reviews, and I have read more resumes, cover letters, and job postings than I ever hoped to count. I've also taught roughly 350 large format live lessons via Zoom over those 4 years. And yet, standing here in front of you today is a very different type of scary. So if y'all don't mind, I'm just gonna step off stage and call back in on Zoom. Joking aside, hopefully I've convinced you that I'm qualified to give this talk. It is based on my experiences of the last 4 years working with entrance into tech through unconventional pathways. And together, I'm hoping this kicks off the discussion about how we can revitalize some of those other options again. I'm hoping there's a little something for everybody in this room, and we'll walk away with some good ideas and next steps for keeping the doors open for tech learners. If you're a learner or an early entrant in the tech space career, and by early, I don't mean it is your first job ever, I just mean tech is something new to you, I hope you walk away with exposure to or greater direction around the options you may not have tried yet, or at least more confidence in things you've already been considering. If you're an experienced engineer, manager, or leader in tech, I would like you to walk away with some new ideas, an invigorated spirit for how we can offer support and why it matters. And I want to make a disclaimer before I start that what I'm about to say is not really a definitive answer. This has been a very hard question to think about. There are a lot of unknowns. For the last 2 to 3 years, really, the market has been kind of in a weird place. And so there's some things we just don't know, but I want to leave you with some things you can do right now to carve the pathway into tech for these new set of entrants. So remember that part when I said I was a teacher for 4 years? So this is our interactive portion of the talk. So first up, is there anyone here who learned to code in a non-traditional way? Self-taught, boot camp, on the job? Wow. That's a lot of people that wouldn't be here without these options. Right? That's, I don't know, if I had to guess, 80% of the hands that just went up. Cool, so we see the value in having options. Next, we're gonna do what we call a turn and talk in education. I want you to turn and talk to the person sitting next to you. If you are sitting next to someone you know and someone you don't know, pick the person you don't know, and just share briefly about one map maker or mentor or someone who helped you on your journey to tech. And I'm better at the silent treatment than you are, so please commence. All right, if you haven't switched partners yet, let's switch. All right, let's bring it back forward. If you met someone new and you haven't finished your conversation, I invite you to complete that during the next break or maybe go to lunch together. And part of what I hope we're getting from this is remembering kind of those warm fuzzies and how important it was to have those people that helped us on our way, to have those map makers. So now that we're all primed and ready to go, great warm up, you did way better than I expected. We're gonna talk a little bit about the bootcamp era, just briefly. It started sometime around 2011 and 2012. I can't find a specific date, but that was the best I could come up with. It grew in popularity before peaking around 2022 with the advent of AI for the everyday user and some interesting layoff patterns at Twitter. Tech started doing some really weird things. Unemployment is uncertain, and so the desire and commitment for quitting everything to start anew becomes kind of questionable. Boot camps offered an alternative to the four-year education, which generally promised to be a sustainable, stable, and fulfilling career for many who may not have had the privilege or ability to complete a four-year degree. Typically, they cost significantly less in terms of dollars and time, most ranging from 3 to 7 months and costing $25,000 or less, compared to a four-year degree, which takes 4 years, and averages a little over $11,000 per year at a public in-state university, exclusive of the $13,000 of room and board, if you need to pay that as well. The bootcamp structure was important because it meant less debt, less time, missing out on earning income, flexible start dates, programs that were full-time, part-time, online, in-person, whatever you need. And so it was a good opportunity for many people that were good fits for this career, but for whom a four-year degree was not the best path forward. All of whom I listed when I introduced myself. Many of you sitting in this room. And all of these people have far fewer options now than they did even a year ago. So how did we get here? Lack of enrollment is a huge one, and therefore funds. A primary reason a lot of these programs closed was the decrease in enrollment, likely driven by the cool job market, and it has been pretty cool, especially for juniors. If you are someone who's trying to break into the industry right now, you probably know that better than anybody else. Since mid to late 2022, we are definitely in that spot where no one is quitting a job, taking out a loan, spending 6 months in school, and then maybe finding a job afterwards. And this isn't really a boot camp problem specifically. The market as a whole just isn't great right now. We even have CS grads who are struggling to land first gigs. Although, for organizations that offer internships and apprenticeships, a lot of them require that expensive piece of paper that says you belong there in order to even qualify for those jobs. In short, tech education is in a real weird spot right now. Okay, so why do we care? There's a huge debate about whether or not AI is taking our jobs, and I know AI is getting better every day. I also know that while it functions at about the level of a junior engineer for most teams, it's not fully replacing human engineers for a while, if ever. Part of the problem with this whole debate is that up until very recently, I hadn't heard anyone talking about the pipeline problem. Unless you truly believe that every currently employable software engineer is every engineer the industry will ever need from here on out, we still need our pipeline. We still need juniors who can become mids and seniors. And if your AI is acting like a junior engineer anyways, there's an argument to be made about hiring a human instead so that you can train up your next mid. Sometimes working with humans is hard, but I have to say I have yet to meet a robot that I would rather work with 100% of the time over a human team. When we hire humans, which includes juniors, we're building teams we want to work with. And when you hire juniors, you build them up and mold them into the team you want and need. I know this isn't a new reason to hire juniors, but it is something to keep in mind when we talk about why tech education should matter to you. Maintaining greater access to tech education is necessary for diverse teams, plain and simple. Not everyone who's a fit for this career has access to traditional education paths. So let's review some of the currently available paths that we have for getting into tech. Exclusive of the boot camps, I know there are still some out there, but I really think it's kind of just a matter of time until that is no longer an option at all. We have self-taught, which can look a few different ways. Things like unstructured self-taught, so YouTube videos, blogs, tutorials, just kind of piecing things together as you go. Structured, so a self-paced book or course. I'm thinking, learn Ruby the hard way or learn enough to be dangerous, those types of things. Self-paced lessons that are often paired with those books, or even things like Codecademy. You could make an argument for the docs, kind of. These can feel really unapproachable to someone who's been in the industry for a while, much less an early learner where there is often assumed knowledge that that person may not have yet. There's also things like internships and apprenticeships, which I love. I think they're super practical for learning. In my opinion, after 4 years of teaching, this is the most effective way of learning to code. If you're not going to have kind of like that formalized school structure, right? Learn by doing. On the whole, though, there are very few openings. And like I said, many of these don't even allow you to be considered if you don't have a BS or are in progress for that kind of degree. We have communities like this one, conferences, meetups, mentorship, Slack and Discord groups. Again, that's very unstructured learning. There's not really a path there. And of course, the traditional degree program. Without more structured program options, we risk gaps in equity, access, and confidence of new entrants. It is hard to be vulnerable and ask questions in an ideal environment. It's significantly harder in a space where you're already not sure you belong. When I first tried to learn how to code, I did HTML and CSS with Codecademy, and I was really excited to see that first little hello world on the screen. And then if you can imagine my delight, you probably can because we all started somewhere, when I added an H1 tag and it got huge. And then I made it pink. I was on top of the world. I could build anything, right? As long as it was text. It was like GeoCities but better. And then I wanted to show my mom. We lived 500 miles apart, and I was like, I have this file, and what do I do to make it be on the internet? And that was when I realized how hard it was to not know what I didn't know. And it was hard to have no one to ask. It was hard to figure out what to ask, even when I found a person to ask. It's like that meme. Have we seen this one? How do you draw an owl? Draw 2 circles, and I just draw the rest of the fucking owl. And this is what we lose when we don't have good avenues to solid structured education. We don't have a built-in how-to, there are increased barriers to getting questions answered, it's harder to find mentors, and there's no encouragement about getting involved or just cheering you on when you're trying to build your thing. And we also have to consider how exclusion can creep in without realizing it. Any ideas how that happens? A big one that I notice, even teaching, right, because there's always kind of been a stigma around the bootcamp grad, is referrals. How many people here work in a place or have worked in a place where someone who has a referral is given some kind of preference over a cold application? And who gets referrals when opportunities for tech education dry up outside of a CS degree? Or reframed, who doesn't? Learners and career entrants. Let's come up with a solid list of ideas for writing your own map. So if you are a note taker, now is your chance. Build a project over self-paced courses. Choose something to build. If you don't have an idea, just start with a to-do list. It really doesn't matter. It's not about the what. It is about the learning to build something. Self-paced courses should be a tool in helping you build, not the goal or the objective. And practice makes perfect, and the more true to life that practice is, the better prepared you will be for the job. You should set very specific goals for yourself. Be clear about what you want to build. It's okay if you don't know how yet. It is easier to ask specific questions than vague ones. Let's look at an example. We'll do the to-do list because everyone knows what a to-do list is. So it's going to be really simple. We're going to add, edit, complete, delete, and view a list of all of our to-dos. That's it. That is all you're building. Once that works, you can add 5 more features. You'll learn more from doing this than any number of tutorials. And notice there's nothing on this list about making it beautiful or look pretty. That's not what this is about. You're doing one step at a time. Not unlike what our speaker this morning had said, we're doing the big rocks first. We don't need to add in all of the little details. We just need to keep it simple and practical. I also like setting accountability goals. So if you find a mentor that you can check in with to be an accountability buddy or even review some code with you or review ideas and features. And I also like finding a peer partner. It can be really lonely trying to do this on your own. And so if you find someone who's in the same place as you, that can be really helpful for keeping you moving along. AI is an aid, not an answer when you're an early learner. We heard quite a bit about this yesterday, like how do we fit it in the right way, how do we use it well? And I know our next speaker is going to talk a bit about this, so I'm not really going to dwell on it. But you need to make sure you understand what you're learning and not just getting your project to work by AI brute force. And despite what I just said, you need to have a strong answer for how you use it in your day-to-day. You need to know how it works for you. I've had a handful of tech interviews this summer, and every single one of them expected me not only to answer how I use AI in my day-to-day, but to actually use it on the tech challenge. So it's not doing the work for you, but you should have an answer about how you're using it. It is increasingly being used on the job, often required, even when the engineering team doesn't want it. And I'm seeing more and more that the scales are tipping in the direction of this as a thing. It is here to stay. Saying I use ChatGPT is not a thoughtful answer to that question. Think about implementation practices that you've tried. What are the types of questions you ask? At what point do you reach for it when you get stuck? What helps you understand concepts best? What increases your productivity? What slows you down? That's a big one to take note of. I think a lot of people end up in a cycle where they think they're making progress, but they're actually not. But ChatGPT is really good at making you feel good. Are there specific tools that you like? Is it Chat, Cursor, Claude, something else? Figure out how AI works in your workflow. And when it comes to AI for learning, you should aim to use it as little as possible, as much as you need. What does that mean? When my 4-year-old tries to climb the little climbing wall at the playground, I want to help him as little as physically possible. So he's climbing, and I might have my hands under his butt or under his armpits ready to go. But I want him to navigate this scary situation on his own. If he starts to slip, or maybe he gets scared or panics, that's when I'm going to grab him and tell him I'm here, and I've got it, as much as he needs. You should treat your reliance on AI the same way, as little as possible, as much as you need. Find a mentor, or multiple. If this feels easier said than done, I'll give you some ideas. Your mentor might be someone you met at a meetup or a conference, your friend who works in tech, your friend whose sister works in tech, that person who works in engineering on the 4th floor. They're everywhere, and most engineers are happy to engage when asked. If you found someone who might be a good mentor, what do you say? How do you make the ask? Define what you're looking for in your mentorship relationship. So this might include things like accountability, specific technical advisement or expertise, an emotional support person, job coach, code review. That's just a short list of things you could consider. Also look for the frequency. What do you think would be the right frequency? Kind of similar to AI, you don't want this person to be doing too much of the work. So maybe that's an hour a week via Zoom or as needed on Slack, twice weekly pairing sessions for 30 minutes, or even just to catch up in a coffee shop. Then make your ask. It should be fairly short and straightforward. Lay out what you're looking for and just send a quick email. Here's an example where Dana lays out what she wants, a mentoring relationship. She defines her ideal schedule, 30 minutes a week, and specifies what she's seeking help with, progress and questions as she builds her project. It's easier to say yes when it is clear the person making the ask has been intentional about what they're asking for and would like from the relationship. All right, Our learners have a solid list for starting. How about our leaders and experienced engineers, potential mentors in the room? How can you support learners? Be kind. And there's a reason I have to say this. We got a hearty reminder yesterday during Brandon's opening keynote how harmful it is when people don't respond with kindness when you're trying something new. Remember how daunting it is to send messages like the one I just showed you and put yourself out there to people. If you aren't interested, all you have to say is a polite thanks for reaching out. I don't have capacity to take on a mentee right now. Best of luck. And then you move on. Going back to the AI thing, both with mentees and on the job, how do you coach interns, apprentices, and juniors to use AI as little as possible? And I think if we consider how AI has been effective for those in more senior level roles, a lot of what I've seen and experienced is that the clearer you are with your requirements, the better AI responds. How should this be architected? What tools do we want to use? Naming patterns, testing, etc. And what's so great about this, all of these things are also excellent for supporting juniors and early learners on your team or who you mentor. An issue written such that AI can handle it well is also an issue that a junior or early learner should be able to make some decent headway on without needing to rely too heavily on AI. Speaking of interns and apprentices, while I'd love for orgs to just kind of go back to hiring juniors and seeing value in that, I would also be pretty jazzed to see more paid internship and apprenticeship opportunities that are open to learners of all education paths, including self-learning. And I will throw this out there because I think it's super neat. Was anyone here at RailsConf in July? Do we remember the Power Home Remodeling folks? Yeah, there were about 100 of them there, if I remember correctly. So I got to talk to quite a few people, and I learned they have an internal boot camp. And so they find 5 to 6 people per cohort in non-engineering roles and train them up and then immediately put them into junior level roles on their team. And I think that's super cool. And I really like that idea as kind of like the next spin on the idea of a boot camp is like, if we know we need these people, can we train up from within? One of the hardest parts about the old boot camp system is you graduate, you find your own job. In good times, that's not a big deal. It's a little daunting, but most people found jobs. During times of uncertainty, when the economy feels unstable or in decline, when AI is doing things we used to assign to juniors, when bots make up 70% of our applicants, getting the job is the hardest part. I would love to see more train from within programs and push for just general growth in that way. All right, quick hit list of ways you can show up for learners. Kindness first, that is always number one. Sign up for a mentorship app. One that I'm familiar with is Mentor Loop, and you can say like what you're looking to mentor for. On the flip side, if you were looking for a mentor, you can also sign up on that same app, and that's where you get paired. Offer to mentor or share contact info with a learner from a meetup or a conference. The pressure and intimidation factor is real. So if someone mentions they might be interested in a mentor and you could fill that role, offer. I like to keep a gist of commonly referred resources so it's easy to share with someone who asks. So one that I have is about open source. I get asked that, 3 or 4 times a year from an early learner, how do I get started? And so it is kind of a summary of like all of the quick resources and ways to get going. There's a lot of info out there and a lot of them feel kind of overwhelming. And so if you have kind of a short list that you often send people, put it in one place that's easy to share out. Offer to introduce your mentees and learners to people they might like to know. This might be based on things like industry, language, or framework. And refer them to an opportunity if it makes sense to do so. I like this one. Offer to co-write a blog or do a video or a LinkedIn post. Sometimes we just need that push, that courage to get something out there when we're new. And propose formal programs in your workplaces. Nudge your leadership away from the paper ceiling requirements. Okay, teacher time. If you are a learner, junior, or otherwise consider yourself an early career entrant into tech, please raise your hand. Okay, honestly, a little bit fewer than I expected, or maybe we're feeling shy. If you just raised your hand, raise it again if you need a mentor. Okay, if you don't already have one, hint, your hand should be up. Okay. If you're an experienced engineer, please raise your hand. If you are open to a mentorship with a tech learner, please keep your hand up. Wow, there are a lot more of these people than the ones looking for mentors, just saying. So I hope you saw. All right, recap. Where do we go from here? Learners and juniors, you're up first. Find a mentor. Don't believe those hands, but you know who you are. This has always been true, but it's true now more than ever. Find yourself a mentor or multiple. Get yourself into communities you want to be a part of, meetups, conferences, Slack groups. Learn through a project, create a plan, set goals, hold yourself accountable. AI, as little as possible, as much as you need. And our experienced engineers. Offer mentorship as you're able. Prep some Go docs like a gist of resources that you can share out with learners if asked. Push for more apprenticeships and junior roles on your teams. Engineers can't do that alone. We need help from our leadership and organizations. Add more internships, apprenticeships, and junior roles, please. AI is not an adequate long-term replacement for people. Remove degree requirements. I think they're really overrated, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about that offline later. Consider internal train-up initiatives. This isn't really about the boot camps. I'm really sad that my school closed, and I also recognize why it was time. I don't have to like it for it to be true, and the industry support just isn't there right now. This is about keeping access open to learners of all kinds and realizing the value of building teams that include people who didn't have access to a formalized degree program. It's about acknowledging the extraordinary privilege that is required to enter tech the traditional way. It's about the value it brings to your teams, your products, your organization, to include people from all backgrounds and demographics, and we just aren't doing that effectively when we limit our pathways into tech. Part of what made writing this talk so challenging is that even from the time I submitted my proposal to right now, my feelings have oscillated quite a bit. As often as I'm asked, how can I get into tech, I'm also asked, but is it even worth it? And the answer to that is I don't know. Our structured paths are reducing. We aren't hiring people coming out of four-year programs or bootcamp programs, and teams are downsizing more than growing as of late. It's a risky bet. If this isn't how we want our story to end as engineers and product builders and lifelong learners, we need to make sure we're pushing our teams in the direction we would like them to go, and that includes making space for the next generation of engineers. Maps are never finished, and the moment we think we know the terrain, something shifts. A new language, a new learner, a new way to teach, and that is the beauty of it. We're not supposed to just arrive, we are supposed to keep walking together. Thanks. I think I'm at time because I started late. Does anyone have questions? Yeah, so the question is, he had a student, I guess like a mentee type situation, bail, and how to get that to pick back up. I could answer that two ways. The first is recognizing how overwhelming it is, and especially if someone is kind of learning on the side of working their full-time job, or maybe they're a parent or whatever it is. Time just doesn't always work the way you expect it to, right? I mean, I think we've all experienced that. And so when that happens to me, I touch base. It's kind of like on a sliding scale where like it might be every week. And then after I get no response, I might just check in every 3 months or something, just to sort of see where they're at. The other answer to that is, and this one was a really, really hard one to learn as I was like teaching as my job. I can't care more than the person I'm mentoring. And that kind of sucks, right? Like I want everyone I'm teaching to do their very best and succeed, but I can't do the work for them. Which is why after a while, after my periodic check-ins, you kind of just have to taper off, right? If you're carrying that load for them, they're just not going to get where they need to be at that point in time. Yep.
Yeah, I heard you use the phrase that, microphone. I heard you use the phrase that we are in a post-bootcamp era, and I was wondering if you could just elaborate what do you mean when you say that we're in a post-bootcamp era?
Yeah. I tried to find a number of how many boot camps have closed in the last 3 years, and I could not find it. It has been X number. A lot of programs are closing, And so what I mean by post-bootcamp era is that is quickly not becoming an option for people, right? So if you want a formalized way into tech, 3 years ago, if someone asked how to get into tech, your answer was probably go get a CS degree or choose a boot camp, right? There might have been a couple other things sprinkled in. Today, choose a boot camp is not really an option. There are a couple still hanging on. I could be mistaken on this. I believe they are all for profit, which I also have strong opinions about, because teaching should always be for the betterment of the student. So does that answer your question about what I mean by post-bootcamp era? Yeah. The question was, how can we convince companies to scale what they pay juniors, right? Because you start training them and then they leave for someone else who's going to pay better. Short answer is good for them, like, right, know your worth. I would also question, are the non-junior salaries market equivalent or not? Because I found in a lot of places that's not necessarily true, right? If your juniors are low, others are also low. If that's not true for you, it might be worth poking leadership about that. Like if you see the value in these other levels that you're hiring for.